Good morning everyone, my name is Abhishek Aggarwal and today I'm going to present my research report to you. This presentation will include the top what methods do I use to collect the data which I require for this research, what does this research bring to the world, what is its value, and what are some limitations with this research. So let's get started with the topic of this research. My topic for this research is challenges faced by teaching staff in managing cultural diversity in Australian university. So why I chose this specific topic is because of the following reason. The first and the foremost reason is international student enrollment. It is really interesting to see how international student enrollment has increased in Australian universities from 280,000 in year 2002 to 800,000 in year 2017. And it is also interesting to know how these international students come from different cultural background. And as a fact, most of these international students come from East Asia region and are from non-English speaking background. Another reason for my research is less instructor-centric research is available out there. So there have been a lot of research about challenges and the cultural diversity challenges and how to overcome, but they are all student-centric. So, and the researchers out there provide solution for the students, what they could do to improve themselves in those cultural diverse workplaces. However, there is really less research done for the teachers and the lecturers who teach these culturally diverse classes. Moving on to that, the purpose of this report, why I did this report, is to make recommendations and strategies. So by doing this research, I would like to make recommendations and strategies for lecturers and teachers to understand and develop strategies to how to face these difficulties in the teaching environment, what things they should do to overcome those challenges they face while teaching international students who are from different cultural backgrounds. Moving on to that, my research approach. So before I move on to my research approach, I want to talk to you about the type of research I'm doing. I'm doing qualitative research. And the reason why I'm doing qualitative research is because to gain a new perspective of an issue. This issue, I want to explore more about it and to gain what it is and how it's going to be, and to understand, observe, and interpret the information out there. Moving on to the approach, I'm using an exploratory approach. The reason why I'm doing that is to find out more about the issue, as there is not much known about this particular issue. There are certain articles regarding this, there's certain researches about regarding this particular issues. However, they're not in bulk, or they're they're not making any theories out of that. Further down to that, I'm using a narrative inquiry approach as well. What I mean by narrative inquiry approach is to explore the lived experience of the participants. What do they feel and how they experience, how were they experienced, and to have a narrative-based approach so that they could tell the stories they have with them, and then collect the data from that. Moving on to that, the types of data I'm going to collect. So there are two primary types of data I'm going to collect. One is primary data and second is secondary data. What primary data includes for my research is interviews and observational reports. And the second data for my research would be existing research articles which are already out there. They could be general and specific to this issue as well. Moving on to that, the method of collecting. As I have discussed in my previous slide, my primary source of data would be primary data, which includes interviews. So my method of collection of data would be interview. However, my interview is going to be semi-structured. And what I mean by semi-structured is that I'm not going to lead the participant to a certain answer which I want for my research. However, I will give them the space to share their experiences and they make their own way to the end of the interview. It would be more open and broad discussions interview where I would give them a topic or I would give them a question and they could share their own beliefs about it and the challenges and the issues they face about that and their perspective about certain situations. So it's not going to be closed-ended interview, it's going to be open-ended interview where the participant is free to share their ideas. Moving on to that, the questions which I will be including in my interview will be: how do you feel about working in a culturally diverse workforce? Second, what are some challenges you face while teaching culturally different international students? Third, How do you overcome these challenges? Fourth, were you being provided any training to overcome these challenges? If yes, was it useful? Fifth and last, what are some recommendations you would like to make about some of these useful techniques and methods which you used or which you got to know in time and which could help the other lecturers who are facing similar situations? So the overall gist of this interview question is to gain the perspective of lecturers and teachers about their journey, how they got into it, was there any training provided to them, and how did they feel about it in the starting, was the training helpful, and what are some recommendations? So there are some teachers who are in this who are teaching from a very long time, and they have developed their own methods and techniques to deal with certain kind of situation in this particular case. Moving on to who would be examined in this research. So there are three criteria which we are choosing to um, include in this research: people, criteria, and location. So who's gonna be studied in this research? Lecturers gonna be studied in this research. However, not every lecturer can be considered, as the lecturers only who's teaching international student could be only considered, because there are a lot of lecturers in Australia, in Australian universities who are teaching multiple students, but they're not all teaching international students. Some of the lecturers just teach local students, so those lecturers can't be taken into consideration for the interview purposes. And the location is gonna be La Trobe University, Melbourne campus, Melbourne, which is located in Melbourne, Australia. Moving forward to the sampling data. So the method which I use to sample the data is purposeful strategy method, and the reason why I chose this method because of the four following criteria, which are time restraint. I have a time restraint. I have a research to do in 3 months, so there's a time restraint. Specific selection. I'm not researching everybody, and I'm just focusing on a specific group of people. This method is cost effective and works very well on a small sample size. So that's why I chose purposeful strategy method for sampling. Moving on to the value of research. So this is the most important part of my presentation: value of this study. What value this study brings to the world. So there are total 5 values which I perceive are the most important um, for this research. First, it helps to understand the issues faced by the lecturers. Second, it helps university to raise its teaching standards. Third, will develop guidelines for future lecturers. Fourth, will contribute to existing literature. Fifth, help lecturers to cope up with their work-life pressure. So what I mean by these values are to help understand the issues faced by lecturers. So they've been really, as I discussed earlier, they've been really less information out there about the challenges lecturers face while teaching international students. So it would help us to understand more about the issues they face. Second, the university standards. So in Australia, there are a lot of universities who are focusing on attracting more international students. And apart from the technological advancements and things they could do to give a better environment to students, the basic fundamental of the university criteria is the teaching standard. And as there are a lot of international students, it is really good if the university focuses more on the teaching standards. And why is there a need of teaching standards? Because there are a lot of new lecturers and teachers joining up universities every year, and they might have not faced this culturally diverse um, student group. So it is good for them to have a prior knowledge about the challenges and things they should do to overcome those challenges while dealing with international students on a regular basis. Contribute to the existing literature. As I said earlier, there's not much research done, so it would contribute to the sector of research, and it would help lecturers to cope up with their work-life pressure. So while doing a lot of research, I found out that it's just not the students who face pressure. It's the lecturers as well who face pressure. Um, Not just pressure, they can feel anxiety and depression, and especially the lecturers who are in their first to 5 years of teaching period, they face a lot of anxiety and depression, as sometimes the students, doesn't understand what they're teaching, and they don't reciprocate to what the lecturer is teaching them. They doesn't give a good response to the efforts the lecturer or the teacher is making. Moving on to the limitation of this research. So just like any other research, this research has got some limitations as well. The first limitation it has is the small sample size due to the lack of time and resources. As this research is um, is supposed to be conducted in a very short period of time, I was not able to sample um, a lot of people for this research. Only a small size of 6 is what I'm considering to interview. Um, Moving on to the next limitation, culturally biased opinion of lecturer. I figured it out that this is the biggest limitation of this research. And why is it? Because in Australia, most of the lecturers have their own cultural beliefs. If they're Australian, they have Australian cultural belief. If they're British, they have British cultural belief. Or if they're Indian, they have Indian cultural belief. To explain the situation better, I would like to present an example. For example, um, there's an Australian lecturer, and the majority of students are Indian. So one confusion which could be there is, in Australian culture, you're supposed to look into the eye and talk to someone. However, in Indian culture, students are not supposed to look into the eye of the lecturer or someone above someone who is on authority. So in this situation, the lecturer might feel that the student are not paying attention to them or disrespecting them. However, it is just the cultural differences. So the opinion lecturers give could be culturally biased. They could be true for them, but they might not be true for other people. So that's one big limitation for this research. The third limitation is, due to the small sample size, I'm unable to develop a theory. I would just be able to make some recommendations and strategies and guidelines um, on how to face these challenges. However, I wouldn't be able to develop a specific theory. Moving on to the next one, and the last limitation is location specific. Only one university is being considered. So there is a very strong probability that the problems faced by lecturers in La Trobe University could differ from the problems faced by lecturers in RMIT or Deakin University. So there is a high probability that I might miss out some of the um, key problems faced by lecturers, as they are from different university and they might have their different opinions about it. So that's about it, and I would move to the reference slide now. These are the references which I use for this presentation. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much.